The alarm systems across the Caltharian patrol station screamed into life at 600 hours Galactic Standard Time. Scout Commander Vril's 4 eyes widened as he stared at the detection screens. Something massive had just appeared on the edge of charted space, and the energy readings made no sense at all. "Run the scan again," Vril ordered his crew, his voice tight with concern. "This must be an error." The second scan came back identical to the first. Whatever was out there was bigger than any vessel in the known galaxy. The energy signature alone exceeded the entire Caltharian fleet's combined output by a factor of 10. Vril immediately transmitted an emergency signal to the Galactic Council, headquarters on Centrum Prime. Within minutes, representatives from 47 species were gathering in the council chambers, their voices rising in panic and confusion. Commander Tae-min sat in the human observation deck aboard the diplomatic vessel Horizon's Voice, watching the emergency session unfold on the main screen. His dark eyes reflected the blue glow of the holographic displays as species after species demanded answers that no one could provide. "Commander, you should see this," Dr. Ji-won called from her science station. The young woman's fingers flew across her console, pulling up the data that the Caltharians had shared with all council members. "These readings are incredible. Whatever that thing is, it's using technology that shouldn't exist." Taemin moved to stand beside her, studying the numbers carefully. He had spent 15 years in space, first as a pilot and now as a diplomatic vessel commander. He knew ship signatures better than most people knew their own families. This one was completely unknown. Could it be the Vorath testing a new superweapon? Ji-won asked quietly. The Vorath were the Council's dominant military power, a species of massive reptilian warriors who had ruled the known galaxy for 3,000 years. Their technology was the most advanced in Council space, and they made sure everyone knew it. "No," Taemin said slowly. "Even the Vorath don't have anything like this. Look at the power distribution. It's too efficient, too clean. This is something completely different." On the main screen, Vorath Councilor Threx was already making demands. His scaled face filled the display as he roared at the assembly. "We must send a battle fleet immediately. This unknown vessel poses a threat to Council security." Ambassador Hyun-woo, the senior human diplomat, stood to address the council. The older man's gray hair and calm demeanor had earned him respect among many species, even though humans were considered a minor member of the council. "Perhaps we should attempt communication before assuming hostile intent," Hyun-woo suggested diplomatically. "We know nothing about this vessel or who commands it." Threx's laugh was cruel and dismissive, spoken like a weak species. "This is why humans will never be more than observers in real galactic affairs." Taemin felt his jaw tighten, but he said nothing. Humans had joined the Council only 80 years ago, and in that time they had learned that patience was more valuable than pride. When dealing with species who measured their civilizations in millennia rather than centuries, the Council voted to send a scout group to investigate. Commander Vril volunteered his fastest ships, eager to prove Caltharian courage. 6 small vessels departed the patrol station and accelerated toward the unknown signature. Taemin watched their progress on the Horizon's voice tracking systems. Ji-won stood beside him, her hands clasped nervously in front of her. "They're getting close," she whispered. 500,000 kilometers, 400,000, 300,000. The scout ships began their active scanning procedures, flooding the area with sensor beams designed to penetrate any known shielding technology. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the unknown vessel responded. It happened so fast that Taemin almost missed it. 1 second, the scout ships were transmitting data normally. The next second, all 6 vessels went completely dark. No explosions, no debris, no distress calls. Just silence. The council chambers erupted into chaos. Species representatives shouted over each other, demanding action, calling for war fleets, accusing each other of treachery. Threx was the loudest, proclaiming that the Vorath would mobilize their armadas immediately. "Wait," Ji-won said suddenly, her voice cutting through the noise in the Horizon's voice bridge. "I'm picking up a signal. It's coming from the unknown vessel." Taemin moved quickly to her station. "What kind of signal?" "Encrypted transmission. Narrow beam, directed at Council headquarters." Ji-won's fingers worked the console, trying to decode the message. "The encryption is strange. It's using protocols I've never seen before, but the structure feels familiar somehow." She worked in silence for several minutes, while Taemin watched the chaos continue on the council broadcast. Finally, Ji-won sat back, her face pale. "Commander, you need to see this," she said quietly. Tae-min looked at her screen and felt his blood run cold. The encryption pattern was indeed familiar. It was human. More specifically, it was Earth military encryption from over 200 years ago, from the old colony expansion era. "That's impossible," Tae-min breathed. "No human ships use those codes anymore. They were retired before we even joined the council." "I know," Ji-won replied. "But there's more." I managed to partially decode the message header. It's addressed to humanity specifically. Not Earth, not the human delegation. Just humanity. Tae-min straightened slowly, his mind racing through the implications. An unknown vessel, using old human military codes, appearing from beyond charted space with technology that made council warships look like children's toys. It made no sense. "Send a priority message to Ambassador Hyunwoo," he ordered. "He needs to know about this immediately." Ji-won nodded and began composing the transmission. On the main screen, Counselor Threx was still demanding military action, but now other species were joining him. Fear made people aggressive, and the Council had never encountered a threat it couldn't identify or understand. Tae-min watched the unknown vessel's position marker on the tactical display. It was moving now, slowly but steadily, heading deeper into Council space. Not aggressively, but with the certainty of something that knew no force could stop it. The scout ships that had gone dark suddenly reappeared on scanners. They were intact, floating in space with their crews unconscious but alive. Whatever had disabled them had done so without causing permanent harm. That was almost more frightening than if they had been destroyed. It suggested a level of technological control that bordered on the incomprehensible. Ambassador Hyunwoo's face appeared on a private channel to the Horizon's voice. "Commander Tae-min, I received your message. Are you certain about the encryption pattern?" Dr. Ji-won verified it 3 times, Ambassador. "It's definitely old Earth military encryption." Hyunwoo was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with concern. "Then I need to access some very old, very classified files. Commander, what I'm about to tell you cannot be shared with anyone outside human command. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." 250 years ago, Earth launched a deep space colony mission called Project Exodus. The colony ship was named the Eternal Vigil. It carried 50,000 people beyond the edge of charted space, looking for new worlds to settle. The ship was designed to be completely self-sufficient and was equipped with experimental weapons systems that were decades ahead of their time. Tae-min felt a chill run down his spine. "What happened to it?" "It vanished. No contact, no signals, no trace. After 50 years, the mission was declared lost and all records were classified. Earth didn't want other species knowing we had lost an entire colony fleet." Hyunwoo paused. "Commander, if that vessel out there is connected to the Eternal Vigil, then we have a serious problem. Because whatever they found out there in the dark, it turned them into something powerful enough to frighten the entire galaxy." Captain Soo-jin had never expected to be pulled from her intelligence post on Mars and thrown into the middle of a galactic crisis. Yet here she was, standing in a conference room aboard the Council's primary investigation vessel, surrounded by representatives from a dozen different species who all looked at her with varying degrees of suspicion. The Vorath investigator, a hulking creature named Drex, slammed his clawed hand on the table. "The evidence is clear. This vessel uses human encryption. It responds to human signals. Your species is hiding something." Soo-jin kept her expression calm and professional, even though her heart was racing. "We're hiding nothing. The human delegation has been completely transparent about Project Exodus." "Transparent?" The Keltharian delegate's voice was sharp. "You lost an entire colony fleet and told no one for 2 centuries. That is not transparency." She couldn't argue with that. When Ambassador Hyunwoo had revealed the existence of Project Exodus to the Council 3 days ago, the reaction had been predictably hostile. Every species had secrets, but humans were supposed to be the weak newcomers, not the ones with missing superweapons floating in deep space. "The colony was declared lost," Soo-jin explained for what felt like the 100th time. "Earth had no contact with them. We assumed they died or settled somewhere beyond our reach. There was no conspiracy." "Then explain how a lost colony returns with technology that surpasses the entire Council combined," Drex growled. Soo-jin had no answer for that. None of them did. That was why she had brought engineer Dong Hyun onto the investigation team. The man was a specialist in historical spacecraft, particularly from the colony expansion era. If anyone could figure out what had happened to the Eternal Vigil, it was him. Dong Hyun sat quietly at the end of the table, his tablet showing complex technical readouts. He had barely spoken during the entire meeting, preferring to study data rather than engage in political arguments. Engineer Dong Hyun, the Council Inquisitor Mexthan, said, his translator making his voice sound mechanical and cold. "What have you discovered about the original colony ship specifications?" Dong Hyun looked up, adjusting his glasses nervously. He was more comfortable with machines than people, Soo-jin knew, but his expertise was too valuable to leave him in the laboratory. The Eternal Vigil was impressive for its time, Dong Hyun began, displaying a holographic model of the colony ship. It was 3 kilometers long, equipped with experimental fusion drives and prototype plasma weapons. The ship could sustain its population indefinitely, using advanced hydroponics and recycling systems. Could it have survived for 250 years? Mexthan asked easily. The ship was designed for multi-generational colonization. But here's what doesn't make sense. Dong Hyun pulled up the energy signature data from the unknown vessel. This new ship, the one that appeared in Council space, is producing energy levels that are 40 times higher than what the Eternal Vigil could have generated even with 2 centuries of improvements using known technology. The room fell silent as everyone absorbed that information. "Are you saying it's impossible?" Drex demanded. "No," Dong Hyun said carefully. "I'm saying they found something out there. Something that gave them a massive technological advantage. The energy patterns suggest technology that's completely outside Council understanding." Soo-jin stood and activated the central display. She had spent the last 3 days piecing together everything they knew, and now it was time to present her conclusions. "Here's what we know for certain," she said, displaying a timeline. The Eternal Vigil launched 250 years ago with 50,000 colonists. They traveled beyond the edge of charted space, heading toward a region with potentially habitable planets. All contact was lost after 3 years. 50 years later, Earth declared the mission failed. She advanced the timeline. Now this vessel appears, broadcasting old human military codes and demonstrating technology that's centuries ahead of anything in Council space. The logical conclusion is that the Eternal Vigil survived, found something extraordinary, and spent the last 2 centuries developing it. But what could they have found? A small amphibious delegate asked nervously. What technology could advance them so far beyond us? "That's what we need to find out," Soo-jin replied. "And there's only one way to do that. We need to make contact." Drex laughed, the sound harsh and mocking. "Your scout ships tried that. They were disabled in seconds without the vessel even slowing down. How do you propose we communicate with something that treats our best military hardware like toys?" "We send a human ship," Soo-jin said simply. "The vessel is specifically broadcasting to humanity. It wants to talk to us. Let's give it what it wants." The argument that followed was heated and lasted for hours. Many council members were opposed to letting humans make first contact, fearing it would give Earth an advantage in whatever came next. Others were simply too frightened to want anyone to approach the unknown vessel at all. Finally, Ambassador Hyun-woo himself intervened from Council headquarters. His face appeared on the main screen and his expression was grave. "The Council has voted," he announced. "Commander Taemin's diplomatic vessel, the Horizon's Voice, will attempt first contact. Captain Soo-jin will accompany them as the Council's official observer. A fleet of Council warships will maintain a safe distance in case things go wrong." Soo-jin felt her stomach tighten. She had argued for this outcome, but now that it was happening, the weight of responsibility felt crushing. If this went badly, it could mean war between humanity and the Council, or worse, war with whatever the Eternal Vigil had become. 3 days later, Soo-jin found herself aboard the Horizon's Voice, watching as the small diplomatic vessel approached the unknown contact. Commander Taemin stood on the bridge, his posture relaxed but his eyes sharp and focused. Dr. Ji-won worked at her science station, constantly monitoring the massive vessel that grew larger on their view screens with each passing hour. "How big is it?" Soo-jin asked quietly. "Our scans estimate 40 kilometers in length," Ji-won replied. "But it's hard to get accurate readings. There's some kind of interference field around it that distorts our sensors." 40 kilometers. Soo-jin tried to imagine a ship that size. The largest vessel in the Council fleet was barely 3 kilometers long. This thing was more like a mobile city, or a fortress. "We're receiving a signal," the communications officer, Lieutenant Min Seok, announced suddenly. It's responding to our hails. Put it through, Taemin ordered. The main screen flickered and then showed a face that made everyone on the bridge freeze. It was human, but not quite. The man's features were Korean, his dark eyes sharp and intelligent, but there were subtle differences. His skin had a faint metallic sheen, and when he moved, there was a fluid grace that seemed almost mechanical. I am Admiral Kyung-soo of the Iron Crucible, flagship of the Exodus Fleet, the man said, his voice clear and strong. You are Commander Taemin of Earth. It wasn't a question. Taemin nodded slowly. I am. Admiral, on behalf of Earth and the Galactic Council, I ask about your intentions. Kyung-soo's expression didn't change. My intentions are simple, Commander. We left Earth 250 years ago as colonists. We return as protectors. Humanity will no longer be dismissed as weak. We have come to ensure that. The Council needs to understand what happened to you, Taemin said carefully. Where you've been, what you found, how you built vessels like the Iron Crucible. We found a dying civilization, Kyung-soo replied. They were called the Architects. They had ruled this galaxy millions of years ago, before your Council species even existed. We discovered their last refuge, their final library of knowledge. They gave us everything before they faded into extinction. We spent 2 centuries learning, building, and preparing. Sujin felt a chill run through her. An ancient civilization, more advanced than anything currently in the galaxy. It explained everything and made the situation so much worse. And now you've returned, Taemin said. Why now? Because we've been watching, Kyung-soo said. We've monitored Council space for decades. We know how humans are treated. We know about the plots against Earth by certain Council members. We know everything. His eyes seemed to bore through the screen. Humanity deserves better. We will make sure they get it. The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the Horizon's voice in stunned silence. Sujin exchanged looks with Taemin, and she saw her own fear reflected in his eyes. The lost colony hadn't just survived. They had become something powerful enough to reshape the entire galaxy. And they were about to do exactly that. The Iron Crucible filled the entire view screen of the Horizon's voice, and still they could only see a fraction of its massive hull. Commander Taemin had spent his entire career in space, but nothing had prepared him for the sheer scale of what the Exodus fleet had built. The vessel wasn't just a ship. It was a statement of power that made every Council warship look like a child's toy. I'm reading 18 weapon systems just on the section we can see, Dr. Ji-won reported, her voice barely above a whisper. And that's not counting whatever else they have hidden. Captain Sujin stood beside Taemin, her face pale but determined. The Council fleet is maintaining position at 1 million kilometers. They're ready to intervene if needed. Taemin almost laughed at that. The Council had sent 300 warships as an escort. Their most powerful vessels positioned in battle formations that had won 1,000 conflicts. Against the Iron Crucible, he doubted they would last more than a few minutes. We're being hailed again, Lieutenant Min-seok announced. Admiral Kyung-soo wants to speak directly with Commander Taemin. Accept the transmission, Taemin ordered, straightening his uniform. The screen changed to show Admiral Kyung-soo once more. Behind him, Taemin could see the bridge of the Iron Crucible, a vast space filled with technology that seemed to blend organic curves with geometric precision. Officers moved efficiently at their stations, all of them showing the same subtle enhancements that Kyung-soo possessed. Commander Taemin, I invite you aboard the Iron Crucible, Kyung-soo said. We have much to discuss and it should be done face-to-face. Sujin immediately put her hand on Taemin's arm. That could be a trap. We know nothing about their true intentions. Kyung-soo's enhanced hearing apparently picked up her words even though she had spoken quietly. Captain Sujin, if we wanted to harm you, your ship would already be disabled. We disabled 6 Keltharian scout vessels without effort. Your diplomatic ship would pose no challenge at all. It wasn't a threat, just a statement of fact, which somehow made it worse. Taemin made his decision. I'll come aboard, but my science officer accompanies me. Acceptable, Kyung-soo replied. We will send a shuttle. Unlike your current vessels, it will make the journey in minutes rather than hours. The transmission ended, and Taemin turned to find his entire bridge crew staring at him with various expressions of concern and disbelief. Sir, are you sure this is wise? Min-seok asked carefully. Probably not, Taemin admitted, but we need answers, and the only way to get them is to see what the Exodus fleet has become with our own eyes. Ji-won was already gathering her scanning equipment. If I'm going to examine their technology, I'll need my full sensor suite. They'll probably have technology that makes your sensors look like ancient calculators, Su-Jin said dryly. But yes, take everything you need. The shuttle arrived exactly 7 minutes later, and it was like nothing they had ever seen. It moved through space without visible engines, its hull made of some dark material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. When it docked with the Horizon's voice, there was barely a sound. Taemin and Ji-won stepped into the shuttle's interior and found themselves in a space that seemed larger than should have been possible given the exterior dimensions. A single pilot sat at the controls, a woman with the same enhanced features as Admiral Kyung-soo. "I am Chief Tactical Officer Ha-yoon," she said, her voice pleasant but carrying an undertone of absolute confidence. "Welcome aboard. The journey to the Iron Crucible will take 4 minutes. 4 minutes to cross a distance that would have taken the Horizon's voice over an hour." Ji-won immediately pulled out her scanner and began taking readings, her scientific curiosity overcoming her nervousness. The shuttle moved so smoothly that Taemin barely felt any acceleration. Through the viewport he watched as the Horizon's voice shrank behind them, and the Iron Crucible grew impossibly larger ahead. "How many people live on that ship?" he asked Ha-yoon. "The Iron Crucible has a permanent population of 200,000, she replied. "We have 19 more vessels of similar size, plus hundreds of smaller support ships. The total Exodus fleet numbers approximately 5 million people." 5 million. Taemin tried to process that number. The original colony mission had carried 50,000. They had grown, thrived, and built an empire in the darkness beyond known space. "Why did you never contact Earth?" Ji-won asked, her scanner still working. "In 250 years you could have sent a message." Ha-yoon's expression became sad for just a moment. "We did, many times in the first 50 years. But we were too far out and Earth had already declared us lost. By the time we had the technology to bridge the distance easily, we had changed too much. We were no longer the same people who left. We decided to wait, to watch, to prepare." "Prepare for what?" Taemin asked. "You'll understand soon," Ha-yoon said as the shuttle slipped into one of the Iron Crucible's massive hangar bays. The bay was enormous, easily capable of holding 50 ships the size of the Horizon's voice. But what caught Taemin's attention were the fighters lined up in precise rows along the walls. Hundreds of them, each one sleek and deadly-looking, each one probably more powerful than most Council frigates. Admiral Kyung-soo was waiting for them when they disembarked. In person he was tall and imposing, moving with a grace that human bodies normally couldn't achieve. Behind him stood a dozen officers, all watching the visitors with polite but guarded expressions. "Welcome to the Iron Crucible," Kyung-soo said. "I know you have many questions. Let me show you what we have become, and then you will understand why we returned." He led them through corridors that seemed to pulse with soft light, past rooms filled with technology that made Ji-won gasp and immediately try to scan. Officers nodded respectfully as they passed, all of them looking healthy and enhanced in ways that Earth's medical science couldn't match. They entered a vast observation deck that looked out into space. But Kyung-soo touched a control and suddenly the view changed. It became a star map, but not of the known galaxy. This showed regions far beyond Council space, areas that no exploration vessel had ever reached. 230 years ago, we found the last refuge of the architects, Kyung-soo began, highlighting a region of space. They were dying, their species down to just a few thousand individuals. They had fought a war millions of years ago and lost. The enemy they fought drove them to the edge of extinction. "What enemy?" Taemin asked. "They called them the Devourers, a species that doesn't negotiate, doesn't colonize, doesn't coexist. They simply consume. They travel from galaxy to galaxy, stripping every world of resources and leaving nothing but dead rock behind." Ji-won's face went white. "That's impossible. No species could sustain that kind of expansion." "The architects thought the same thing," Kyung-soo said grimly. "They were wrong. The Devourers nearly wiped them out. The few survivors fled to the edge of the galaxy and hid, spending millions of years in isolation, slowly dying out." He changed the display, showing a massive fleet of ships unlike anything in the current galaxy's design philosophy. "The architects gave us everything. Their technology, their knowledge, their warnings. They made us promise to protect the galaxy they once ruled, and then they died, the last of their kind, knowing they had passed their legacy to us." Taemin felt his throat go dry. "Why are you telling us this now?" Because the Devourers are coming, Kyung-Soo said simply. He changed the display again, showing the edge of the galaxy. There, barely visible, were signs of disturbance. We've detected their advanced scouts. They're still 30 years away, but they're coming. And when they arrive, every species in this galaxy will need to fight together or die separately. The observation deck fell silent. Ji-won had stopped scanning, her equipment hanging forgotten at her side. Taemin stared at the display, his mind racing through the implications. The council needs to know, he said finally. They will know, Kyung-Soo replied. But first, they need to understand that humanity is no longer weak. We are the ones with the technology to fight what's coming. We are the ones who have spent 2 centuries preparing for this war. He turned to face Taemin directly. The question is whether the council will accept humanity as an equal power, or whether we will have to force the issue. Before Taemin could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the iron crucible. Ha-yoon touched her communication device and listened for a moment, her expression darkening. Admiral, the council fleet is moving into attack formation, she reported. War Marshal Drenth of the Vorath has issued an ultimatum. We are ordered to power down our weapons and prepare to be boarded, or they will open fire. Kyung-Soo's expression didn't change. How many ships? 300 of their best warships. The Marshal has positioned them in a standard encirclement pattern. I see. Kyung-Soo turned back to Taemin. Commander, I give you my word that I do not want to fight the council. But I will not allow the Vorath to threaten us. What happens next depends on whether cooler heads can prevail. He touched another control, and suddenly the observation deck's view changed to show the space around the iron crucible. The council fleet was indeed moving into attack positions, their weapons charging, their shields at maximum power. Show them, Kyung-Soo ordered Ha-yoon. The tactical officer nodded and activated a command. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been going for 6 hours, and President Jae-hee of Earth was exhausted. She sat in the human delegation's chamber on Centrum Prime, watching as species after species screamed accusations at each other, while the real crisis continued to unfold in deep space. On the main display, the standoff between the Council fleet and the Exodus fleet played out in real time. 300 Council warships sat frozen in space, surrounded by 19 vessels that could destroy them all without breaking formation. War Marshal Drenth of the Vorath was demanding immediate military reinforcement. Other species were calling for negotiation. Some were already quietly recalling their fleets, preparing to abandon the Council entirely if war broke out. This is humanity's fault, Councillor Threx roared, his massive form dominating the speaker's platform. They hid a secret military colony. They let it develop super weapons, and now they use it to threaten us all. President Jae-hee rose to respond, her voice calm but firm despite her anger. Earth had no contact with the Exodus fleet. We declared them lost 250 years ago. What they became in the darkness is not our doing. Yet they claim to act in humanity's interest, a small reptilian counselor hissed. They say they will protect Earth. How convenient that you suddenly have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. Ambassador Hyun-woo stood beside Jae-hee, his diplomatic experience showing in every measured word. The Exodus fleet is not under Earth's command. Admiral Kyung-Soo has made that clear. They are an independent human faction that views Earth as their ancestral home, nothing more. Then prove it, Threx demanded. Order them to stand down. Tell them to surrender their weapons. Show us that Earth truly has no control over these rogue humans. Jae-hee felt the trap closing. If she ordered the Exodus fleet to stand down and they refused, it would prove Earth had no authority over them. If she didn't give the order, the Council would assume Earth was secretly controlling the fleet. Either way, humanity lost. Captain Boram, commander of Earth's defense fleet, appeared on a private channel visible only to the human delegation. The older woman's expression was grim. Madam President, I need to inform you of a development. Fleet Admiral Young-sik has issued a general mobilization order. Every human military vessel is being recalled to Sol System. Jae-hee's blood ran cold. On whose authority? His own, ma'am. He says that if the Council is going to treat humanity as a threat, then Earth needs to prepare for the worst. He's not wrong, but it's going to make the situation much worse politically. She was right. The moment the Council learned that Earth was mobilizing its military, every species would see it as preparation for war. The fragile peace that had lasted 80 years would shatter. Captain Sujin's voice cut into the channel, transmitted from the Iron Crucible. Madam President, I need to report what I've learned. Admiral Kyung-Soo has evidence of 3 council species planning to subjugate humanity. They've been quietly building a coalition to limit human expansion and eventually reduce Earth to a puppet state. Can you verify this evidence? Jae-hee asked. I've seen the intelligence files. They've been monitoring council communications for decades. The evidence is solid, ma'am. The Varath, the Keltharians, and the Nexari have been planning this for 20 years. Hyunwoo closed his eyes briefly. That explains why they're so aggressive now. They know their plans have been exposed. They have to act before we can present evidence to the full council. On the main display, War Marshal Drenth was making another speech, calling for a vote of no confidence in human council membership. Several species were already signaling their support. The council was fracturing along power lines that had existed for centuries, and humanity was caught in the middle. We need a different approach, Jae-hee said quietly. We can't fight this politically, and we can't fight it militarily. We need to change the entire conversation. How? Hyunwoo asked. By telling everyone the truth about what's really coming. Back in deep space, Commander Tae-min stood on the bridge of the Iron Crucible, watching the council fleet with growing concern. He had managed to establish a direct communication line with War Marshal Drenth, but the Vorath commander was refusing to back down. You have 1 hour to surrender your vessels for inspection. Drenth's voice boomed through the speakers. If you refuse, we will consider it an act of war against the council. Admiral Kyung-Soo stood calmly beside Tae-min, his enhanced eyes studying the tactical displays. Marshal, you're making a mistake. We don't want to fight you, then surrender. I cannot do that. These vessels are the defense of humanity, and I will not disarm them because you feel threatened by our strength. Dr. Ji-won looked up from her console, her expression worried. Commander, I'm detecting more ships entering the area. Vorath reinforcements. Another 500 vessels. 800 ships now surrounded the Exodus fleet. It was the largest military mobilization the Council had assembled in 300 years, and still Tae-min knew it wouldn't be enough if fighting actually started. Admiral Kyung-Soo, Tae-min said quietly, if this becomes a shooting war, humanity loses no matter who wins. Even if the Exodus fleet destroys every Council ship here, Earth itself is undefended. They could strike Sol system while you're fighting here. I'm aware, Kyung-Soo replied, which is why we won't fire the first shot. But make no mistake, Commander, if they attack us, we will defend ourselves completely, and I promise you, the Council will learn to regret starting a war with humans. Chief Tactical Officer Ha-yoon was working at her station, coordinating with the other Exodus vessels. Admiral, all fleet ships are at full combat readiness. Shields at maximum, weapons charged. The crews are ready. Tae-min looked at the faces of the Exodus personnel on the bridge. They were calm, professional, and completely confident. They had spent 2 centuries preparing for conflict on a galactic scale. This standoff with the Council was probably just practice for what they expected to face when the Devourers arrived. Incoming transmission from Earth, Lieutenant Min-seok announced. It's President Jae-hee. She's requesting a direct link to Admiral Kyung-Soo. Kyung-Soo nodded, and the screen changed to show the President sitting in her office on Centrum Prime. She looked tired but determined. Admiral Kyung-Soo, I am the elected leader of Earth and humanity's official representative to the Galactic Council. I need to know your true intentions. Are you here to protect humanity or to conquer in its name? Kyung-Soo studied her for a long moment. Madam President, my ancestors left Earth to find new worlds and new hope. They found something greater. They found purpose. We learned that the galaxy is not safe, that threats exist beyond what the Council imagines, and that humanity needs to be strong to survive. We returned to share that strength with our homeworld, not to rule it. Then help me end this standoff peacefully, Jae-hee said. The Council is afraid. Fear makes people do terrible things. Give me something to work with, some gesture that shows you truly want peace. I cannot disarm, Kyung-Soo said firmly. The Devourers are coming. Humanity needs these weapons. Then prove the Devourers exist. Show the Council what's really coming. Make them understand that we're all on the same side. Kyung-Soo was quiet for a moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. I will transmit all our data on the Devourers to the Council. But I want something in return. What? A unified human authority. Earth and the Exodus colonies must speak with one voice if we're to be taken seriously by the Council. I propose a joint command structure. Earth provides political leadership, the Exodus fleet provides military strength, and we work together to prepare humanity for what's coming. Jae-hee glanced at Ambassador Hyun-woo, who nodded slightly. That would require negotiations, proper agreements, formal treaties. It can't be done overnight. Then we start now, Kyung-soo said. Transmit your proposal to the council along with our evidence. Let's see if they're wise enough to accept the truth. 2 hours later, every species in the Galactic Council sat in stunned silence as they reviewed the data the Exodus fleet had provided. Images of dead worlds stripped of all resources, recordings from architect archives showing the destruction of an entire civilization, projections of the Devourer fleet's approach still decades away but inexorable as a tide. Councillor Threx was the first to speak, and for once, his voice held no anger. If this is true, if these Devourers are really coming, then we are all unprepared. Our weapons, our ships, our entire military philosophy is designed for conflicts between Council species. We have no defense against something like this. That's why we're here, President Jae-hee said, standing to address the full council. The Exodus fleet spent 2 centuries learning from a civilization that fought the Devourers and lost. They know what's required to win. They know what weapons work, what defenses hold, what strategies succeed. Humanity can share this knowledge with the Council. But only if you're willing to accept us as equals rather than treat us as threats. War Marshal Drenth stood slowly, his massive form seeming somehow less intimidating than before. What you're proposing is a complete restructuring of Council military doctrine. It would take decades. We have 30 years, Kyung-soo's voice came through the transmission from the Iron Crucible. 30 years to build new fleets, develop new weapons, train new crews. 3 weeks after the standoff in deep space, Captain Soo-jin stood in the newly established Joint Command Center aboard the orbital station above Earth. Through the massive viewport, she could see the construction of something that would have been impossible to imagine a month ago. The first human dreadnought forge was taking shape, a massive structure that would eventually produce warships using Exodus fleet technology, combined with Council manufacturing capacity. It's incredible, Dr. Jiwon said beside her, tablet in hand displaying technical specifications she was still trying to fully understand. They're building it faster than any Council construction project. The Exodus engineers are teaching us techniques that shouldn't be possible. Engineer Dong Hyun was working at a nearby console, coordinating with teams from 6 different species. The architects understood something that the current galaxy forgot. Building quickly doesn't mean building poorly, it means building smart. Every component is designed to fit together perfectly. No waste, no delays. Captain Boram approached, her Earth Defense Force uniform now bearing a new insignia that combined Earth's symbol with the Exodus fleet's emblem. The United Human Authority was still being formalized through endless diplomatic negotiations, but the military integration was moving faster. They didn't have time for politics when the countdown to the Devourer's arrival was already ticking. Captain Soo-jin, you're needed in the conference room. The first joint strategy session is about to begin. Soo-jin nodded and made her way through the station's corridors. In just 3 weeks, this place had transformed from a simple diplomatic outpost into the nerve center of humanity's military preparations. Officers from Earth and the Exodus fleet worked side by side, sharing knowledge and building a unified command structure that would have seemed impossible before the Iron Crucible's arrival. The conference room held representatives from both human factions and observers from the Council species. President Jae-hee sat at the head of the table with Admiral Kyung-soo beside her, a physical representation of the new power structure. Earth provided political authority and diplomatic connections. The Exodus fleet provided military expertise and advanced technology. Together they formed something greater than either could be alone. War Marshal Drenth was present via hologram, along with representatives from the Keltharians and a dozen other species. The Voreth commander's attitude had changed dramatically since the evidence of the Devourers had been presented. Fear had a way of making old enemies see reason. The Council has voted to approve the Emergency Defense Initiative, Drenth announced, his voice still gruff but no longer hostile. All member species will contribute resources and personnel to the construction of new defensive fleets. Humanity will lead the military planning, using Exodus fleet knowledge and architect technology. Commander Taemin, who had been appointed as liaison between the human military and Council forces, stood to present the strategic overview. We've divided the preparation into 3 phases. Phase 1 focuses on shipbuilding and weapons development. We need to construct at least 5,000 vessels capable of fighting the Devourers before they arrive. Phase 2 involves training and integration of mixed-species crews. Phase 3 will be the establishment of early warning systems and defensive positions along the galactic rim. A Keltharian counselor raised one of his 4 hands. 5,000 ships in 30 years. That's more than the entire Council fleet built in the last century. The Devourers won't care about our construction schedules, Admiral Kyung-soo said flatly. They'll arrive in 30 years whether we're ready or not. We need to build faster than we ever have before, or we'll die slower than we can imagine. Chief Tactical Officer Ha-Yoon activated a holographic display showing the new ship designs. These are the template vessels we're proposing. The Defender-class frigate will be the backbone of our fleet, fast, well-armed, and capable of being produced in large numbers. The Guardian-class cruiser will provide heavy firepower and command capabilities, and the Titan-class dreadnought will serve as fleet anchors and mobile fortresses. All designs incorporate architect technology, Drenth asked. Adapted and improved, Ha-Yoon confirmed. We've spent 2 centuries refining what the architects gave us. These ships will be more advanced than what they had when they fought the Devourers. We have advantages they didn't, but we can't be overconfident. President Jae-hee spoke up, her voice carrying the weight of authority. This initiative will require sacrifices from every species. Resources will need to be redirected. Economies will need to adapt. Some will suffer hardship in the short term, but the alternative is extinction. I need to know that the Council understands and accepts this. One by one, the species representatives indicated their agreement. Even those who had opposed humanity's rise to power recognized the reality of the situation. The galaxy faced a threat that made all their previous conflicts seem petty and meaningless. Ambassador Hyunwoo stood to address the diplomatic considerations. We're also proposing the establishment of refugee protocols. When the Devourers arrive, there will be species who live near the galactic rim who will need to evacuate. We must prepare safe zones deeper in the galaxy and ensure no one is left behind. Evacuating entire civilizations will be a massive undertaking, a small amphibious delegate said nervously. The logistics alone could overwhelm us, which is why we start planning now, Hyunwoo replied calmly. The Exodus fleet has experience with long-term population management from their colony days. We can help coordinate the evacuation efforts. Lieutenant Min Seok entered the room and approached Commander Taemin, whispering something urgent. Taemin's expression grew serious and he addressed the assembly. We've received a transmission from one of our deep space monitoring stations. They've detected unusual energy signatures near the galactic rim. They match the patterns the architects described for Devourer scout vessels. The room fell silent. Everyone had known intellectually that the threat was real, but having actual confirmation made it visceral and immediate. Admiral Kyung-soo stood, his enhanced eyes reflecting the holographic displays. This changes our timeline. If their scouts are already probing the galaxy's edge, the main fleet could arrive sooner than we estimated. We need to accelerate all construction schedules. How much sooner? President Jae-hee asked quietly. Worst case, 20 years instead of 30, maybe less. The implications of that hung in the air like a physical weight. 10 years was an enormous difference in a construction timeline. It meant harder work, greater sacrifices, less time for training and integration. It meant some projects that had been planned would have to be abandoned in favor of faster alternatives. Then we work harder, Drenth said, surprising everyone with his determined tone. The Vorith have never retreated from a fight. We will not start now. Our shipyards will run at maximum capacity. Our engineers will work in shifts around the clock. We will meet this deadline. Other species representatives began voicing similar commitments. The threat of the Devourers had done what centuries of diplomacy could not. It had united the galaxy in a common purpose. 6 months later, Captain Soo-jin stood in the observation deck of the completed Dreadnought Forge, watching as the first Titan-class vessel took shape in the construction cradles. The ship was enormous, stretching 3 kilometers in length. Its hull incorporating design elements from a dozen species and technology from the architects themselves. Dr. Ji-won was beside her, as always, marveling at the technical achievement. Do you think we'll be ready in time? I don't know, Soo-jin admitted honestly. But I know we'll try harder than any civilization has ever tried before. The Exodus fleet proved that humans can adapt and overcome incredible challenges. Now we're showing the entire galaxy how to do the same. On the construction deck below, humans and aliens worked side by side, welding hull plates, installing weapon systems, and wiring the complex networks that would control the massive vessel. Earth Defense Force officers coordinated with Exodus Fleet engineers. Vorath metallurgists worked alongside Keltharian electronics specialists. The galaxy was learning to cooperate in ways it never had before. Commander Taemin's voice came through Sujin's communicator. "Captain, you're needed at the command center. Admiral Kyung-soo wants to show you something." She made her way to the central hub where Kyung-soo was waiting with President Jae-hee and several council representatives. On the main display was a star map showing the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated confirmed Devourer scout sightings. There were now 7 of them scattered along the rim. "They're surveying us," Kyung-soo explained. "Cataloging our worlds, assessing our defenses, preparing their invasion routes. This is standard Devourer tactics according to Architect records. First they watch, then they attack." "How long do we have before they move from observation to invasion?" President Jae-hee asked. "Based on the patterns, we estimate 15 to 20 years before the main fleet arrives. But their scouts will begin raiding operations within 5 years. Small attacks, testing our responses, looking for weaknesses." Engineer Dong Hyun pulled up a defensive grid overlay. "We're establishing early warning stations at key points along the rim. If the scouts move toward inhabited systems, we'll know immediately.